Wünschst du dir jemanden, der dich versteht wie kein anderer? Jemand, der deine Wünsche wahr werden lässt und mit dir das schönste Abenteuer deines Lebens erleben möchte? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify richtest du im Nu deinen Online-Shop ein, ganz ohne Programmier- oder Designkenntnisse. Dank der effizienten Einrichtung und intuitiven Social-Media- und Online-Marketplace-Integration kannst du über Instagram, eBay und Co. werben und verkaufen. Neue Zielgruppen zu erreichen war noch nie so einfach. Shopify bietet auf einer einzigen sicheren Plattform alle Tools, um dein Online-Business aufzubauen. Kostenlos testen und dein Business der Welt präsentieren. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Einfach shopify.de/try eingeben und loslegen. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify. Wusstest du, dass Zehntausende deutsche Unternehmen bereits Shopify nutzen? Von innovativen Start-ups bis hin zu Familienunternehmen mit langer Tradition? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify kannst du Produkte über beliebige Kanäle verkaufen. Ob persönliches POS-System oder umfassende E-Commerce-Plattform. Auch Social Media und Marktplätze wie Facebook, Instagram und eBay werden unterstützt. Dank der ständig wachsenden Auswahl innovativer Funktionen und des zuverlässigen technischen Supports ist es ganz einfach, dein Business mit Shopify aufzubauen. Ob Produktpräsentation oder Bestell- und Zahlungsabwicklung. Shopify bietet alles, was du für die Verwaltung deines Business brauchst. So kannst du dich ganz auf dein Business konzentrieren. Shopify kostenlos ausprobieren und dein Business voranbringen. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Also shopify.de/try. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify.
The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, in its role as connector, dialogue partner, watchdog, and intervener,
when you first start business, your target is to make your first million.
Seeks to change the narrative and trajectory of the Nigerian economy. Together with our partners, we're not just solving problems, but preventing them, because when advocacy succeeds, the nation transforms for the better. But advocacy is for the strong. It takes fact-based inputs, resilience, partnerships, courage, and a lot of heroes. So be our hero. Subscribe to our channel, listen to our messages, and engage with us. Together, we can transform Nigerian lives, communities, and businesses. Welcome to the NESG Radio.
Yeah, welcome to the NESG Radio. My name is Wilson Erumebo, and I will be speaking to you about the NESG policy brief titled Sectorial Reforms and Investments in Nigeria, a focus on the manufacturing sector. So a brief background on the document. What we did, looking at the manufacturing sector, is to highlight some of the key opportunities that exist within the sector, some key challenges, and the fact that how important the sector is in terms of lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty, particularly through the creation of jobs for Nigerian teeming populace. Now, in the report, we highlighted the need for Nigeria to be able to implement certain policy interventions to be able to, improve productivity of the sector, and as well as address some of the concerns that the sector has been facing over the years. Now, manufacturing sector contributes less than 10% of Nigeria's GDP. That's if you look at the... So what we did here was to look at the manufacturing sector and how important the sector is, particularly in terms of job creation and lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty. Now, it's no longer news that Nigeria is battling with, a serious unemployment problem. Underemployment rate is also increasing. So unemployment rate was 33%, as of December 2020. Underemployment was 23%. So if you add both rates, we're looking at 56% of Nigerians in the labor force who are unemployed or underemployed. Now, with COVID, about 8.8 million Nigerians were added into poverty, which brings the total of Nigerians living below the poverty line at 90 million. Now, these are real concerns for the country, and some of the issues we are facing now, particularly with regards to insecurity, are as a result of some of these unemployment and poverty, concerns that we've had over the years. Now, the manufacturing sector plays a key role and could play a very important role in terms of creating jobs for millions of Nigerians. And when you look at the sector, you'd see that Nigeria has lots of opportunities, lots of potential. We have a very large arable land. We have a very large population. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is also an area of opportunity that which began earlier this year. It's also an area of opportunity for manufacturing, for Nigeria to be able to produce for export, produce to dominate other countries in the continent, and ensure that our goods get to different parts of the world as well, and ensure that, in all of these, manufacturing can be the center stage. It is one sector that we believe it has huge potential that is largely untapped. And this is part of the reason why we decided to focus more on the sector. Earlier in the year, we identified 6 key sectors in our macroeconomic outlook that can create millions of jobs and lift millions of Nigerians out of poverty. And manufacturing was among the 6 sectors. So it is a matter of urgency that we begin to develop the sector to be able to create jobs and ensure that every Nigerian benefits from the progress of the sector. Yes, so the manufacturing sector is among the largest sectors, in the economy. It contributes about 12% to overall GDP. 12%, yes, it's quite large, especially when you compare with some other sectors. But if you compare then with our potential, where Nigeria should be, you can then say 12% is small, and we can even do better, especially when you look at some of the Asian tigers and some of the top countries that are that experienced remarkable growth in the 90s and up to the 2000s. In Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and the likes, manufacturing sector is playing a key role, contributing close to 30% in some cases and even more than 20% in other cases. So yes, so in Nigeria it's just 12%, and initially it used to be 9%, but 12% because in 2020, because of the fact that we experienced significant inflation, prices were increasing. So in real terms, it's actually 9% of GDP. Now, if you look at activities within manufacturing, there are 13 subsectors, according to data by the NBS. Now, out of these 13 subsectors that we have, 3 of them account for about 77% of what is produced in the sector. So it tells you that activities within the sector are very skewed. So if those 3 sectors are able to perform well, then manufacturing would perform well. If those sectors are affected, it means that manufacturing activities will be affected. So what that tells you also is the fact that we need the breadth and depth, within manufacturing. We need to be able to grow many other subsectors that are quiet. Now, the 3 subsectors that dominate activities are cement, food, beverage, and tobacco, and textile and apparel. So this helps us to be able to see the opportunities that are lying fallow, untapped opportunities in the sector, and where we think government can be able to make interventions to be able to improve the sector. In terms of trade, now manufacturing accounts for close to 55% of what Nigeria imports, particularly when you look at manufactured goods. That 55% is really quite huge. In terms of exports, it's just around 7% of what we export to other countries. So it tells you that 7% is even very minimal compared to the potential of the sector. It tells you that we have a lot to do when it comes to producing for export. What Nigeria gets from crude oil in terms of export earnings is 11.5 times more than what we get from manufacturing export. So this points to the fact that yes, we are still reliant on oil. And mind you, this is a data from 2020. when the crude oil, was at its worst stage, and oil export is still 11.5 times higher than manufactured goods export. So this tells you that we have a serious challenge to look at, and we need to be able to produce enough for export. So I think it's very important that whatever policy direction we are setting, we are able to look at these concerns and challenges within the sector and ensure that we are producing enough to sell, we are producing enough to reduce imports, and at the same time producing enough to export to other countries. Now, I must say that investment into the manufacturing sector is what will get the sector to move forward. We cannot keep relying on government interventions all the time. We need to be able to ensure that we have a very stable policy environment to be able to attract investment. Now, if you look at data and the gap between potential and actual, what I mean is announced investment into Nigeria. I mean, this is a data that is published by the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, which basically shows investors' willingness to invest in the manufacturing sector or in the economy at large. Between 2019 and 2020, announced investment stood at $46.6 billion, with the manufacturing sector accounting for about 25% of that. Now, by announced investment, this is just announced; it's not realized investment. But if you then look at actual FDIs and foreign direct investment inflows into the economy, within those 2 years, we attracted just about $2 billion worth of FDI inflows. Now, compare $2 billion worth of FDI inflows and an announced investment of about $46 billion. That's a very huge gap. And one of the things we cited in the report is that the gap between announced investment and actual investment only points to the fact that there are issues, in the sector, issues in the economy. And one of them, which is very key, is policy and regulatory inconsistency. I mean, we've seen several reversals of government policies on importation, the lack of implementation of what provision there is in national policy documents, regulatory concerns and regulatory lapses, and all of these have affected the manufacturing sector. And when you add this to the fact that we have poor infrastructure, inadequate infrastructure, power supply challenges, issues with the road network, logistics, and all that. All of these, make investors not want to commit to making significant billions of dollars of investment into the manufacturing sector. And this, of course, is what is needed to be able to move the sector forward. Yes. So when you look at the problems facing the manufacturing, as highlighted earlier, one of the things we highlighted in the report is the fact that the few areas we have made progress in manufacturing are areas where there is a clear direction from the government and there is a clear sectoral plan, that is active and that is being implemented by the government. One example we cited is the sugar industry. I mean, Nigeria used to be a heavy importer and is still an importer of sugar and whatever component there is. But with the implementation of the National Sugar Development Master Plan, and we've seen how, I think that was implemented, that was enacted in 2012 or so. With that plan coming on board, we've seen how we've been able to attract investments into that space, into the sugar sector. About 157 billion naira worth of investment has been, attracted into the sector, according to the Sugar Development Council. And this is clear, and it's because there is a deliberate plan by the government to improve the sector. And this is, made available to the public. If you look at sectors like the automobile, where Nigeria has made progress in the last couple of years, I mean, there was a clear plan. Nigeria has an automotive policy, which, was clear in terms of the target and in terms of the support that the government would provide to businesses. If you then look at the cement industry, Nigeria used to be a large and heavy importer of cement. But over the course of a few decades, Nigeria turned that tide and became a net exporter of cement, clearly because of the backward integration policy, which aimed to improve cement production and ensure we attain self-sufficiency. So the point here is that for us to be able to move forward and for us to be able to achieve wins for the manufacturing sector, we need to be very clear on our priority areas. What are the areas that we can invest in, that we know we have potential to improve output and to improve exports and to meet even local demand? And there are several examples, that we can point to, and we highlighted some of these in the report. Rice production, wheat, maize, poultry, cassava processing, piggery, and some other, products, that we can, sorghum, and all that we can actually invest in, that we have lots of potential. All investors need a clarity of policy, clarity of direction for the sector, clarity of government support, particularly when it comes to importation, restrictions, and even regulatory clarity as well. And all of these can be contained into a holistic plan for that sector. Nigeria needs to start looking at having a viable industrial policy that sets direction, not just for the manufacturing sector, but for the industrial sector, so that we can be able to ensure that there's consistency, which is very key for investment, particularly investment in huge and large volumes. The other thing that we can do, and what we highlighted in the report, is the fact that infrastructure is very important, and we must be able to ensure that we provide infrastructure. There are several methods, that we can use to achieve this. PPPs is one of the approaches, that we can use to ensure that private capital comes in, and we need to strengthen our PPP laws, ensure that we have regulatory compliance in that area, and ensure that we clearly communicate these to potential investors. The other point we also raised is the fact that security is also very important. And this is not just for the manufacturing sector, it's for businesses in general. It's also for citizens. We need to ensure and guarantee security of lives and property in Nigeria. We must ensure that, our defense, military agencies and, agencies responsible for security are given the necessary equipment and tools to be able to fight whatever social vices we're experiencing in the country at the moment, and ensure that there's monitoring, there's transparency, there's accountability in that process. And the last thing I would point to is implementation. We must ensure that whatever plan we set is implemented by the government, and stakeholders, including the private sector, business member organizations, must be able to provide the necessary support, ensure that there's accountability. When we notice there's derailment from the existing plan, flag this and ensure that relevant stakeholders are engaged and brought to book to be able to ensure that we stick to whatever plan that we set. I will conclude by saying that the manufacturing sector is very important, especially in the light of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Right now, Nigeria is in the process of developing its strategy for Africa, for the AFCFTA, as far as Africa is concerned. And we must ensure that all of these strategies are very much aligned with all the other, strategies and all the other efforts that has been going on, either by the NEPC, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, by NEPSA, and all the relevant agencies, and the Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade, who is responsible for the manufacturing sector. I think we must also ensure that these initiatives are well aligned, well thought out, and to ensure clarity and consistency across board. Lastly, I must say that the cost of not implementing crucial reforms in manufacturing sector is evident in the fact that the sector is not doing well, especially when it comes to exports, and also when it comes to local production of certain goods and services, which are in high demand within the country. So therefore, we must be able to ensure that we have the appropriate plan and ensure effective implementation to ensure that Nigeria becomes prosperous in the future. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. To read the full report, kindly go to www.nesgroup.org/research to download the reports.
Thank you for listening to our content today. Remember to subscribe to the NESG Radio. Follow us across all social media channels and visit our website www.nesgroup.org/NESG Radio. NESG, in the national interest.